Good morning and welcome to First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church in Fort Worth, Texas. We continue to stream our services as a precaution because the rate of infection in Tarrant and surrounding counties has increased in the last few weeks. But in addition to our weekly worship service, we keep in touch through education, administration, and social events, through online meetings. If you would like to join us, please send your email address to administrator@firstjefferson.org. It's November, and there's a lot going on. November is a swinging month, not just a time to give thanks. On Tuesday, the program Sesame Street will be 51 years old. And then on Thursday, November 12th, we can celebrate the 205th birthday of Elizabeth Cady Stanton and consider what we have to do with what's left of our lives in order to be remembered that long. And then the day after that, November 13th, is World Kindness Day. Well, don't wait till Friday to start being kind. Many of us are cranky being kept isolated and socially distanced, and we could use the practice. Mickey Mouse has a birthday on the 18th, celebrating 92 years. And finally, the 29th is Buy Nothing Day, giving your wallet a rest after the post-Thanksgiving Day sales and prior to Christmas itself. The 29th is a Sunday, but that's not going to make it any easier to resist purchasing mania. Maybe we should make it Unplug Your Computer Day as well. Oh, but that's still weeks away. Let's imagine the loving community of worshipers around us as we begin our service this morning with music. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life. Don't leave your anger behind. It has high standards and the world needs vision. Bring them with you, and your joy, and your passion. Oh, bring your loving and your courage and your convictions. Bring your need for healing and your powers to heal. There is work to do, and you have all that you need to do it right here where you are and within this beloved community. Welcome to this worship service. Come, whoever you are, and join us in singing our opening hymn, number 188. Come, come.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaves.
Our song leader this morning is Della Purdon. Thank you, Della and Misha. Say our chalice lighting along with me, if you will. Light the chalice. Cup your hands around the flame and listen as it whispers. What does it say to your warm and weathered palms? Light the chalice. Breathe against the flame. Breathe your fears into it and let them burn into trails of empty gray. Light the chalice. Feel your bones melt like wax, all your hardest parts softening to the touch. Our chalice burns as a symbol of togetherness, burns across the internet, defying viruses and differences of opinion. Please join me in saying our covenant we repeat every Sunday. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Our service this morning is about healing. It is the shared topic this month with small groups and religious exploration. Healing. What a quiet, comforting word with such a big job to do. Listen to it. Healing. The soft air of the H is like a breeze of autumn air. The lilting L is melodic, la la la, and soothing like a stream rippling over hidden rocks. The almost silent ending ing gives it support so it doesn't blow or float away. Oh, there can only be two questions in our exploration this morning. How do we heal? And how can we help the healing? But first, let's start with a story for all ages, a creation story from the Kabbalah, a Jewish exploration of the mystical world of being. The story is called The Shattering of the Vessels, and it was rewritten for children by Amy Petrie Shaw. At the beginning of time, before anything else at all existed, love was all there was, and it filled up everything in the whole universe. But love got bored and lonely. There was no one to be in love with. So one day, love decided to make a world. First, it took a deep breath, a very deep breath. And love got all squished up in taking the deepest breath ever and was so squished that it squeezed out darkness. The darkness was all around, thick and shiny and black. It was beautiful, but now love couldn't see anything. Love waved its arms and kicked its legs around, but the darkness was everywhere. Oh, I have to do something about this, said love. It thought for a minute and tried to think of the most wonderful, beautiful, warm thoughts ever. And love thought harder and harder, and all of a sudden love called out, I want light! And pop! All of the warm and wonderful and beautiful thoughts exploded outward in 10 different directions and shaped themselves into 10 big, glowing glass balls. Each ball was filled with a spinning lump of pure light and warmth. And some of the spare good thoughts that couldn't quite fit in the glasses became dust and water vapor and seeds and molecules that could form plants and animals. And love said, this is amazing. I better make something for the light to shine on. And so it waved its arms and kicked its legs, and all of the dust and water vapor and molecules that had been scattered around when the glass balls formed began to form into another huge ball, this one of dirt and water and plants and animals. And love called this one Earth. Well, the 10 balls of light started toward the earth, and they had made it there in one piece. If they had made it there in one piece, the entire planet would have been exactly the way love wanted it. But the glass balls were too fragile to contain such strong, powerful, wonderful, good thoughts. They broke open and they shattered. And all the good thoughts shattered and flew out like sparks and were scattered about like sand, like seeds, like stars. Those sparks fell everywhere on the earth in tiny bits instead of big clumps that like love intended. "Oh no," said love. "I'm too big. I'll never be able to find all of those tiny sparks. I have to make one more thing." So love waved its arms again and kicked its feet one last time. And people appeared on the earth. They didn't know it, but they were created with one job: to find these sparks, these tiny pieces of wonderful goodness, and to bring them together again in big clumps. And when enough clumps are there, I will recreate the big glass containers to hold them, and this time I will set them down a little more carefully, love said. So, all of us, from the time we are born, have a job. And that job is to help find love and more good and warm and wonderful things. And if we do that, we are healing the world. That's a lovely story, isn't it? It's an old story, and I like the retelling of it. Before I begin my responses to the questions, I should remind you of this fact, that before healing, there is always pain. From the quick intake of breath that follows a paper cut, to the searing pain of a broken bone, from the crushing blow of a broken vow to the staggering misery of a broken heart, from the chaos of a broken community to the agony of a broken world. Pain. As soft and comforting as the word healing is, explosive and anguishing is the word pain. Listen, there's a sermon in the words themselves. Do you remember as a child picking your scabs so you could better watch the amazing process of your skin healing, creating new pink skin before your very eyes? You didn't have to do a thing except maybe keep it clean, and your mother said quit picking at it. Skin heals itself. Bones heal themselves if they're set properly. It's part of who we are, part of the wonderful things we can do without even thinking about them. But there are some parts of ourselves that are harder to heal than others. Hearts broken by grief need help. And I always thought it so sad that we are not always taught the best way to help our hearts heal. Now, I've taught classes in loss and grief, and one of the first things I do is to ask people two questions. What was the first loss you can remember? And what were you taught to do about it? Well, the most repeated first losses were the death of a grandparent or a pet. They're bound to happen when we are young. But even more telling were the repeated teachings of how to deal with these losses. Here are some of them. Don't think about it. We'll get you a new one. That's for dogs, not grandparents. If you're going to cry, go to your room. That's often said to females. Don't be such a baby. That's often said to males. Very rarely were my students told to acknowledge their grief, to work through their pain, to share their stories with someone else. Yet those are the ways that healing begins. And years later, we discovered that our grief is unhealed, buried, pushed away, supposedly forgotten, but it is accumulative. If we don't learn to heal from an early grief, it attaches itself to the next loss, and there we are, trying to stuff all our life's broken hearts into forgetfulness, damming all those unshed tears back into their clogged ducts, trying to replace losses with things. Don't do that. Pain comes before healing. It has to be listened to. It has to be experienced. It has to be respected. And only then does the healing begin. We begin to get the idea that some healings are hard work. Have you ever been within a broken community? In my 30-some years of ministry, I have worked with broken churches. Oh, let me count the ways. I was a good offices person for many years. That's what they call the minister to ministers. That's who they call when a church is split because some of the congregation can't stand the minister and wants to get rid of him or her. And some of the congregation doesn't know what all the disagreement is about. And the rest of them thinks the minister was sent by God. Well, the good offices person first tries to heal the rift among the parishioners, and if that fails, tries to make the parting of the congregation with the minister as gracious and painless as possible. And then comes the interim minister who is there to help with the healing. But that's not the only way churches break and need healing. Sometimes it's a difference of opinion, and one side shouts louder than the other, or tries to. Sometimes it's a misunderstanding, and always it's very painful. Compassion can help the healing, but if that doesn't work, mediation can start the healing process. Good offices persons are trained in mediation. Let me tell you a story about a church from many years ago where a young assistant minister took his own life. That was very sad in itself. The loss and grief in that community had no outlet. A consultant was called in to see if he could help, but he was the wrong person for the job. He told the congregation, "How long has it been?" 4 weeks. "Shouldn't you be over this by now?" And they were not over it. One part of the congregation created a channel for their grief by blaming the senior minister. "You should have seen this coming. You could have been nicer to him. You ought to have been able to stop him." And another part of the congregation took issue with their bullying. "It was you, not the minister. You always have to have things your own way. You probably drove him to it." And neither of these things was true. The young man had issues he had brought with him. The outcome would probably have been the same wherever he had been hired. But grief blinds us to rationality. I was asked to mediate the argument by the senior minister who was having difficulty handling his own grief over the incident. The pain. It was alive in the room where we met. Everyone talked at once. I asked them to sit in a horseshoe. Minister blamers on this side, minister protectors across from them, and the rest of you face me. And then I asked them to speak, one at a time, looking at each other, not at me. I asked one side for one person's words, and then I asked the other side of the room to have one person tell me what they heard. But they wanted to tell their own side. I made them stop until I knew they had listened to what the first person had said. Listening is good medicine for healing. Then that side told one story and the process was repeated. I said only things like, "Did you hear what she said? Is she hurting?" Oh, the meeting went on for hours. They brought in food. But I let everyone who had something to say it. And I made sure everyone understood what the other side was saying. And those in the middle gave compassionate advice. Finally, everyone was heard. Everyone was listened to. At one point, a man from one side of the room walked across the room and hugged someone on the other side. That's when the cause of their grief was acknowledged. That's when the healing began. I came across a piece recently written by the Reverend Karen Johnston comparing brokenness to mosaics. It began with a quote from author Terry Tempest Williams, who said, "Shards of glass can cut and wound or magnify a vision. Mosaics celebrate brokenness and the beauty of being brought together." You'll see on your screen a series of mosaics by our own artist, Julia Sexton. Breathe in their beauty as you listen to Johnston's words. She wrote, I made a beautiful piece of art in a mosaic class this summer, but there were times when I was frustrated at my own limits. The teacher used tools with ease, and when I used them, it was clumsy. Still, the teacher showed me how to use the tool. She never offered to do it for me, which meant that by practicing, I figured it out for myself. I also learned that there were two ways for us to turn large sheets of glass into smaller, usable pieces: the intentional precision of a pistol-handled glass cutter, or using a ball-peen hammer and a thwack of force. Each method renders very different results, both of which are necessary. The beauty of our mosaics emerged from a mixture of precision and chaos, control and surrender. I had arrived to class with a design in mind, but the further along I got, transferring the design from paper to wood, the less the mosaic looked like my original drawing, which was all for the better. Vision is essential, but I had to hold mine loosely so the final project could reveal itself to me along the way. From this class, I gleaned plenty of wisdom for life beyond the artist's studio. First, as much as you can, surround yourself with skillful teachers, no matter what you are learning. Let them teach you, but don't let them do it for you. That learning is yours to do. Second, respect the fragments and shards, whether they're multi-hued glass or your life's own story. Yes, they offer the occasional sharp cut, but they can offer also beauty and new ways to perceive the world. Resist the urge to fully map out the future. Instead, cultivate humility, a sign of strength, not weakness. Find within you the capacity to trust, no matter how small, and grow that. Mosaics. Hear how the word can be broken up into parts. Mosaics. And then be put back together into a single word that suggests healing itself. Let me share with you my generosity report for this week. The fall auction is coming up soon, the 21st of this month, thanks to those who have already contributed, and thanks to Tina Harmuth, who is putting it all together, and to David Bindi, who is helping and will be the auctioneer again this year. And thanks to everyone else Tina has tapped to help out. This is a community event. Don't miss it. The links will be on your weekend update. And one more thank you I have this week. The voting is over, but not the shouting. And I am so thankful for the people who are staying calm and realizing that everyone's next job is to heal the hurt, the difference between the winners and the victors, because we are all one people, and there really is no difference. We still have to work together. My reading this morning is from the book The Wounded Healer by Henri J.M. Nguyen. I'll tell you more about Nguyen in my second response. These are just a few quotes from his book. Our service will not be perceived as authentic unless it comes from a heart wounded by the suffering about which we speak. I found that to be true, haven't you? And he said, when we become aware that we do not have to escape our pains, but that we can mobilize them into a common search for life, those very pains are transformed from expressions of despair into signs of hope. He said, a minister is not a doctor whose primary task is to take away pain. Rather, he or she deepens the pain to a level where it can be shared. And he said, perhaps the main task of the minister and the church is to prevent people from suffering for the wrong reasons. What he was telling us is that nobody escapes being wounded. We are all wounded people, whether physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. Life does that to us. The main question is not how can we hide our wounds so that we don't have to be embarrassed, but how can we put our woundedness in the service of others? In short, who can take away suffering without entering it? Please join me and Della and Misha in the singing of our hymn number 396, I Know This Rose Will.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know my soul will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open.
I think that's one of my favorite hymns in the whole hymn book. I say that every Sunday, don't I, in some way or another. Henri Nouwen was a Dutch Catholic priest, a professor, a writer, a theologian. His interests were rooted primarily in psychology, in pastoral ministry, spirituality, social justice, and the power of community. When he talked about the wounded healer, the ministry of healing, he wasn't speaking just of ordained ministers. He was speaking about all of us and our ministry to one another, our pastoral ministry, our coming together to do justice in community, our willingness to let healing begin. What a wise man he was. Think about the people who have supported your own healing processes. They were not, I would guess, people who had never been touched by brokenness. Nouwen said, nobody escapes being wounded. Why then, he asked, do we have to try to hide our wounds? Why should we be embarrassed by them? Why not put them to use in the service of others? How do we do that? Not by saying, oh, I know just what you're going through, because we don't. It might be similar to something you've experienced, but we don't know how each other is dealing with it, where the pain is, what preceded it. We could say something like, tell me about it. No one dies from acknowledging their pain. Deepen your pain, Nouwen said, to a level where it can be shared. Oh, that's scary, isn't it? Most of us back away saying, I didn't want to make her cry again. But crying might be just what she needs. Those of you who know me know that Mary Oliver is one of my favorite poets. There is a verse that I tell myself often because I need to be reminded of it in order to do my job. I often use it to introduce a memorial service as well. It goes like this. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. No matter how many times I recite these lines, I can feel the tears welling behind my eyelids. I don't say it for members of the departed's family and friends. I say it for myself at memorial services so that I remember that I too am wounded, that I too, from my own experiences, have the power to help people heal. Sometimes we need to prepare ourselves before brokenness begins. All week we have been preparing ourselves no matter how we voted, no matter who we voted for president, for the pain we would feel if our side lost. But did we prepare ourselves to allow the other side to celebrate? Did we prepare how we were going to grieve and eventually heal if they won? This they and us, it's too much. My guess is most of us quit preparing after we prepared for our anger. You see, our country is broken. It would be broken no matter who had won the election. It is going to stay broken unless we can become aware that we do not have to escape our pain, but that we can mobilize our pain into a common search for life, where those very pains are transformed from expressions of despair into signs of hope. This church, this beloved community has been broken in the past. Segments have split off. Some have healed, some have reunited. There must have been pain and healing in all of that. People have left and gone elsewhere. There is still pain, and there is still a lack of healing about some of it. When I first arrived here, there were name tags from people you knew were never going to come back, who you knew were happy somewhere else. But those name tags kept pain alive, not in a way that was allowing healing. I remember the weekend we transferred the wall of name tags from the hallway to their current location in the lobby. And I watched people recite names from dusty, unworn name tags. I listened when they said, "I understand she's a member of Westside now. I heard he went to Oak Cliff. Someone told me they were on the board of Pathways." And the stories I heard, for the most, were positive. I didn't hear anyone say, "What a traitor that family is." And when the time came to let the name tag go, they let it go into a basket reserved for that purpose, a memorial basket. The memories were cherished, and the name tags were recycled. How very healing that was. This community, like all communities that come together for worship, for exploration, for justice and healing, will have opportunities to break again. Well, what a coincidence. We'll have an opportunity for woundedness this very afternoon. We have several items to be voted on at the congregational meeting that begins at 1 o'clock, and there are bound to be disagreements. The rules under which congregational meetings operate allow us to listen to those disagreements, listen and hear them, but we can't hear them if they aren't spoken. They need to be spoken before they can be heard. So do not wound yourself by believing it is better not to say what you were thinking and feeling. Let's talk. Let's talk it out, and let's listen. We are all wounded healers whose ministry is to prevent people from suffering for the wrong reasons. I want to end this segment of my responses with a quote from Rachel Naomi Raymond from Kitchen Table Wisdom. She said, "The healing of our present woundedness may lie in recognizing and reclaiming the capacity we all have to heal each other. This enormous power in the simplest of human relationships, the strength of a touch, the blessing of forgiveness, the grace of someone else taking you just as you are and finding in you an unsuspected goodness. Everyone alive has suffered. It is the wisdom gained from our wounds and from our own experience of suffering that makes us able to heal. Becoming expert has turned out to be less important than remembering and trusting the wholeness in myself and everyone else. Expertise cures, but wounded people can best be healed by other wounded people. Only other wounded people can understand what is needed, for the healing of suffering is compassion, not expertise." This is the time in our service when we share the stories that we call the communion of names and milestones. And I, like everyone else who often go through this, found myself this week telling myself, I won't say anything about it, it being a large hole in my own heart. And then I scolded myself because I'm always telling you, share it with the community. It will start the healing. And so I want to tell you, I had my cat Jessie put down on Monday. Her almost 15 years of companionship will be missed, and I would appreciate your gentle thoughts. Our own Julia Sexton, whose beautiful mosaic artwork you saw earlier, fell down the stairs recently. She is sore, but when I talked with her, she hadn't yet gotten to see the doctor to see if her ribs were broken. Ouch. Keep her in your thoughts. Breathe in some of her pain and breathe out love. I ask you to spend some time in silence each Sunday, meditating on the stories that are shared and unshared in this community. Today I'm going to do something different. I'm going to recite a meditation while you close your eyes or relax, however you like to meditate. And after the spoken meditation, we will listen to some healing music from Misha. Let the difficulties of the week take their Sabbath now, their brief and simple rest. Let the coming silence be like hands pulling back a curtain, revealing the table set with the feast of life, which is present here and now and has been the whole while. Will you play for us? Music also heals, doesn't it? This is my third response to the two questions I asked you to ponder. There are many paths to healing. One of them is a personal path, a more difficult path. I had thought to focus on this for the entire service, but decided to bring it up and then have us talk about it together one day later. Many of us have worked on healing one of the products of this brokenness and have been disappointed, but perhaps we have been working on the wrong part of it. We've been working on laws that might heal our brokenness, but we haven't been working on the path itself in our own lives. I'm talking about the path of forgiveness. More broadly, I'm talking about the brokenness of our laws of retribution and vengeance. I'm talking about the death penalty. Listen to the sounds of these words and tell me if you think they lead to healing. Retribution. Punishment inflicted on someone as vengeance for a wrong or criminal act. No healing there. Vengeance, punishment inflicted or retribution exacted for an injury or wrong. Listen to these synonyms: revenge, retaliation, tit for tat, measure for measure, blow for blow, quid pro quo, comeuppance, a taste of one's own medicine, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. No healing words among them. But I find that last one most interesting. It comes from Hammurabi's code, and most people use it for justifying retribution and vengeance, but they've got it wrong. Hammurabi was the 6th king of the first Babylonian dynasty of the Amorite tribe, reigning from about 1792 before the Common Era to 1750 BCE. He created justice in his kingdom by creating strict rules for its adherents. What follows is according to Wikipedia. The significance of the Hammurabi Code lay in its ability to stop the strong in society from preying on or oppressing the weak. The code made sure that everyone received justice, offering protection to the most vulnerable people, that is, widows, orphans, and children in the society. Hammurabi's law of retribution was perhaps one of the reasons the city of Babylon flourished for quite some time. You see, before this time, the strong in society insisted on retribution that was extreme. Death was often the vengeance sought for even minor injuries. But King Hammurabi said, no, you can't take away more than was taken from you. If you have your eye plucked out, you cannot put out both of your assailant's eyes or snuff out his life. If your tooth is broken, knocked out in a fight, you can only have for retribution the same tooth of your assailant, and you aren't required to exact this kind of revenge. Hammurabi's laws in so many ways curbed the excesses of the wronged person in terms of retribution. There was clearly a standard set out for fines and punishments. We've learned a lot in the intervening 3.5 millennia. We've learned that retribution and vengeance do not create healing. They actually block the process of healing. There is no restorative justice in the death penalty. There is only confusion. That fact that the state condemns the act of murder and then murders the original actor is ludicrous. But I'm not talking about the death penalty as much as I'm talking about why we haven't used what we've learned about forgiveness to say to people who demand retribution and vengeance that there is another way. Excuse me. This is obviously a subject that chokes me up. As a psychological concept, the benefits of forgiveness have been explored in religious thought, social sciences, and medicine. Survey data from these explorations indicate that the positive concepts of the groups being explored helped their members be more forgiving. Individuals reported that their religious communities, for instance, added to their success in overcoming addictions and guilt and helped them to become encouraged when they were feeling discouraged. It is suggested by these studies that mindfulness plays a role in forgiveness and health. The forgiveness of others has a positive effect on one's physical well-being. Individuals with forgiveness as a personality trait have been shown to have overall better physical health. Individuals who make a decision to genuinely forgive someone are also shown to have better physical health. Scientific study is interesting, but narrative is more explicit. I remember reading a book by John Steinbeck titled The Moon is Down. If you've not read it, I recommend it. It was written in 1942 in the middle of World War II. It's a short story, and it tells of a military occupation of a small town in northern Europe by the army of an unnamed nation. I once heard it was the most translated and most read book during the years of the Nazi occupation of Europe, but it never once mentioned Germany by name. But here's the gist of the story as I remember it. When the soldiers of the occupying nation killed a member of the local resistance movement, the townspeople did not rail against them, nor did they shun them. Instead, whenever they met a member of the army, they would pull out a picture of their murdered relative and say, for instance, "This is a picture of my son Robert. He was a difficult baby, but it was probably my fault because I spoiled him. He was kind to his sisters and always protected them. He met his wife in high school, and they have 3 children. Let me show you their pictures as well." They would tell as many stories like this as the soldier was willing to listen to, and then add, "He was killed yesterday, and we will miss him. But I don't hold it against you. You were only doing your job." The soldiers were prepared for hatred and resistance, retribution and vengeance. But they were not prepared for forgiveness. In the end, the soldiers rebelled against their leaders and simply left the country, feeling guilt and sorrow. It was a strange and telling story, and I think is still important today. So I'm recommending we all explore the possibility of our healing from life's mishaps through forgiveness. I'm also admitting that while the results are positive, the path is rocky, in places unexplored, and very, very difficult. I have to admit it took me more than 5 years to forgive my mother for ending her own life, for even beginning to imagine what she might have felt justified in her decision to do so. I still have moments when I want to dislike her, and I make myself take a deep breath, and as Mary Oliver suggests, to let her go. I breathe through the pain, acknowledging once again that I am wounded, a wounded healer who is still in the process of healing. Please breathe with me in song with Della and Misha. Hymn number 10009 in the green hymnal, Meditation on Breathing.
Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
Thank you, Della. Love breathed in and created a world according to the Kabbalah. When you breathe in love. When you breathe out, you can breathe out peace. This chalice has burned as a symbol of our pain and of our healing, of our possibility of forgiveness, of joining together to heal the world. We take it now in our hearts, so it's with us always. There is too much pain in this world to not heal. Every day, each of us ministers to a weary world. Let us go forth now and do that which calls us to make this world more loving, more compassionate, and more filled with the grace of divine presence every day. So may it be in all our lives.